I think Clyde makes a somewhat legitimate point here that at his age, Michael Jordan should be showing a little bit more respect and affinity for the guys he competed with and against Marcellus. Is Clyde Drexler bitter here, or does he have a point?
He has a point, a tremendous point at that. And you don't have to be old, you don't have to be elderly to start to respect and revere the guys you played against, your opponents, your foes. It's called the post-game handshake, damn it. And as soon as the game's over, you realize, oh, let me turn this switch off, shake your hand, and give you your props. Many of the awards that I had out there, whether Walter Jones, Orlando Pace, especially Lincoln Kennedy, we would talk before the game and then give each other hell, them giving me more hell than I gave them in return. And then after it, you could just let that go. And I don't understand why MJ doesn't understand how this works, that dynamic. If Michael Jordan would stop punching down so much, if Michael Jordan would lift others and then say, as great as they were, here I am, people would actually have even more love for Michael Jordan. But instead, he likes to diminish all of those around him and then want us to sit there and sum that up and say, oh, you're great. No, you just are better than the diminished parts you just told us about. So I don't understand the mathematics mentally that he's computing right now, but it's actually undermining his greatness. Pump everybody else up. We know who you are. You're one of the two GOATs.
One of the two. I like that you threw that in there, Marcellus. And, I don't think it's hate from Clyde's perspective because, one, I got a chance to know Clyde really well this year, last year in the Big Three when he was a commissioner and also a coach. But I had an opportunity to play during this era against a Clyde Drexler and, of course, Michael Jordan. And not at one point can I remember during Clyde's career he was ever pointing to about him. It's about Clyde Drexler. Yes, he wanted to eventually win a championship and went to Houston, was a part of that. But he always carried himself in a professional manner, meaning the team was first. So I understand his comments. Even when in the 92 finals, and I would happen to be coming out of college, it was a draft combine in Chicago. I was at, game one or game two. I think it was game one when Michael Jordan had the 6 3-pointers. Even at that time when the media was trying to pit Michael against Clyde, Clyde kind of stayed out of the fray because he understood that in order for Portland to win, it wasn't about he and Michael Jordan going up again. It was about the Trailblazers trying to do what they needed to do to beat the Bulls. So I respect what he's talking about because I teach my kids, my son, it's not about you. Yes, you can be a dynamic individual within a team structure, but understand something. In order to win and win big, you need those other, 8, 9, 10 players that's right alongside of you to ensure that you have the best opportunity to win. And it's an unfortunate situation because when Michael played, Michael would give credit at times to a lot of different players. When asked whether he was the GOAT, he would always say it wasn't determined by him. He doesn't want to get into that conversation. He kind of brushed it off. But we go into the deep mindset of who Michael Jordan is. He's never going to turn it off. Some guys are just built different, made different. Mike is that type. Once he got away from UNC, that team atmosphere, Mike got into killer mode, and he's been that way ever since he's won those championships. More importantly, ever since he's retired.
Well, Jim and Marcellus, I think both of you made great points. And Marcellus, I really like your point in terms of if Michael Jordan would celebrate the people he competed against, it would actually lift Michael even higher. And that's my whole problem with Mike and Isaiah and the Pistons. And this is where I think Isaiah and these guys, when you start calling him an undeserving champion, bad for basketball, well, come on, man. You just diminished them and really been unfair. And I don't blame the Pistons for really having a strong response to that. I do think Clyde's a bit bitter here. He wouldn't watch the documentary. He wouldn't consent to an interview for the documentary. But I think he has a very legitimate point about Michael Jordan. The things that drove him to greatness as a player, the fact that he couldn't let it go, he held on to grudges, he found ways to convince himself that people were slighting him. That made him the great competitor and basketball player he is today. But now, at 56, 57, 58 years old, the owner of the Charlotte Hornets, as a statesman, this mindset diminishes him. And so when he's sitting back putting together a documentary that is celebration to me of the greatest era of NBA basketball, to me, of any time, the 80s and the 90s, he should have been focused on lifting up a Karl Malone, a Isaiah Thomas, a Charles Barkley, a Clyde Drexler, the people he competed against. One of the knocks on Michael Jordan is like when he won his championships, it was after Michael and Larry and Isaiah had diminished from the 80s and the 90s. He should be celebrating the Reggie Millers and these guys of that era. He just can't seem to do it. He's trapped in a mindset that served him well as an athlete and a competitor, and a mindset that does not serve him well in retirement. It's a really bad look for Michael Jordan. Marcellus, if you got to follow up quickly before we move on.
Yeah, I just want to push back that he learned the team concept at UNC and then got into selfish mode and didn't change his mindset from there. He actually did. Don't forget those first-round exits 3 years in a row when he didn't have a team around him, and then all of a sudden Pippen, Horace Grant come, and they never lose in the first round again, and then they go out there and win their championship. So Michael Jordan knows how to turn it on and off. Let's not get caught up in what he's doing in terms of media manipulation. That said, man, look, he's just stubborn, and I respect it. It's not so much competitive spirit. He's just stubborn right there. It's some liquor store eyes, man. My Uncle Benefield had them. Stubborn dude.
But here's a mistake we're making. Michael Jordan showed us who he was, especially at the Hall of Fame speech when he went back and kind of went off on the dude that he got cut for. We're trying to make him into somebody he's not. He's already telling us who he is, okay? I accept who Michael Jordan is. So if he's going to keep, punching down, okay, I'm not trying to make him somebody else he's not and not asking a question to why he's not going to change. He's already showed us who he is. So I'm going with that.
Disagree, Jim. That's 350, 360-pound Jason Whitlock has to go away. Has to be made new into somebody else. Michael Jordan, now that he's done playing, he needs to be made into something. Look, man, bitterness and all this anger, it only hurts the person carrying it. All right, we're going to move on very quickly to the NBA season restarting. And a lot of people, or there's already speculation, about the new format. What will it mean? What will the quality of play be like? Which leads to the natural question, if they win a championship, whoever that team is, will they have an asterisk by it? Will it be as respected as other championships? Jim Jackson, go first here. You think whoever the champion is of this complicated season, will it be a respected title?
Well, it depends on the format and what happens. But in the short term, people tend to look at it that way. Kind of like what happened with the Spurs in 98, 99 during the lockout season. It kind of put an asterisk on it a little bit, but as you push further away from it, it doesn't, because you still have to compete and win. I know it's not perfect, and this year is not going to be perfect because of the pandemic and what happened. But the NBA is trying to salvage what can be, I think, a trial and error situation in regards to maybe reseeding in the future playoff scenario. So, I try to look at different sports as well where we had stoppages. Joe Gibbs with the Washington Redskins had 2 seasons in which there were stoppages, but his teams won a championship, the Super Bowl. But he's still a Hall of Fame coach. They don't talk about that the further you get away from it. So depending on what happens in this format, how they get the teams back online, people will talk about it from the beginning. But at the end of the day, as you move further away from the conversation, it's still a championship. They're still honoring what San Antonio did in the lockout season. I was there, only 51, 53 games. And LeBron's 2011, 2012, that still counts, and they're not taking that away from them.
Yeah, I mean, look, we know how sports fans think. If your team wins it, then it's a legitimate title. And if it's not, then all of a sudden you're going to have a gripe. You're going to have something to say. But for me, I think it is legitimate no matter how you cut it, because the consequences will be universal. They will be applied to all teams, whether it's the shortened season or we go into the playoffs. Hey, we just taking the top 8 in every conference. Let's just roll forward. But the penalty will be affecting all the same. So it's a legitimate title. But I know Laker fans who have the largest fan base will cry the loudest if they don't win the title, because we all, as NBA fans, have muscle memory of the Lakers clicking the longest. Yeah, I know Milwaukee had a better record, but if Milwaukee fails in this new edited format, we kind of look at last year and say, well, they failed last year. But LeBron, an aging superstar who had everything rolling, I think Laker fans would certainly have a gripe. And then you could go to the Clipper fans who are like, hey, we finally started to gel together and we were still right there and we weren't even playing our best basketball. Outside of those three teams, maybe Boston will have a gripe. The rest of y'all shut up. Y'all didn't have a chance in hell anyway. But those four teams right there, they got something to say about this.
Well, I just think if the Clippers, the Lakers, or Bucks win the title, no one will talk about asterisk. It'll be a legitimate title. Anybody else wins the title, and there's going to be like, man, if the season had rolled on like it's supposed to, Boston, y'all wouldn't have won this title. The Houston Rockets, y'all wouldn't have won this title. If it's one of the big three, the Clippers, Lakers, or Bucks, Giannis, Kawhi, or LeBron, it'll be legitimate, it'll be forgotten. If it's not, because to me, the only team that I think really deals with an asterisk in NBA fans' minds is Hakeem Olajuwon's Houston Rockets, the 2 years Michael Jordan set out. Though that's the only titles I've seen where people kind of diminish it. Oh, Michael wasn't there. And Jim, you're right. LeBron's first title, compromised season. Tim Duncan. But now Tim Duncan's got 5 titles. No one says, well, he's got 4 and then that one doesn't count. Houston, and Houston, it would make sense for Houston to win this title with James Harden and Russell Westbrook and still fire Mike D'Antoni after winning the title. That would be the ultimate asterisk. All right, we got to keep rolling on. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. And be sure to check out more of the best clips from Speak For Yourself, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.